Hi, my name is Jessica Vanell. I used to be party princess for kids parties, and today I am answering some of your questions about being a party princess. This is the second video I have made in this series. If you'd like to see the first one, it's going to be linked somewhere on screen or in the description below. When you played as Ariel, did you ever have to get in water and act like a real mermaid? So unfortunately, I never got to really play Ariel. I did get to take some pictures as her for promotional materials, but I never did play her for a party. But I still got to go to mermaid training. So there was one day, I think it was for my boss's baby shower actually, that a bunch of the girls gathered together, and while we were celebrating in the baby shower, we also were trained on how to swim in the mermaid tails with the monofin. But as a fun fact, Ariel actually never swam in the waters at parties. She usually sat on a stair about waist deep in the water, and she read stories to kids, she interacted with them, she maybe handed out some treasures from a treasure chest she brought with her, but she never actually went and swam around with the kids, primarily because her wig and her seashells couldn't get wet. They were very highly stylized. The seashells were not fully waterproof, and trying to restyle a wig after getting submerged in chlorine is really difficult, and my boss, frankly, did not want to deal with that, nor did she really have the time for it. So what Ariel would do instead is she would bring a couple of friends with her to the party, and the friends were actually usually just other girls from the party company in tails and a monofin, and they would style their natural hair and wear makeup that they would then set with a waterproof setting spray, and they were the ones who would actually swim around in the pool with the kids. So they would still get that swimming with the mermaid experience, even if it wasn't necessarily Ariel. But we're not done with the topic of mermaids just yet. I did get to take promotional pictures as Snow White mermaid, and this was because my bosses realized that in Florida, there were a lot of requests for pool parties, but not every parent or kid necessarily wanted Ariel at their pool party. Maybe the kid was obsessed with a different princess at the time. So what my bosses figured out was that they could have other princesses as mermaids go to these parties. And the story that we used was that Ariel asked her dad, King Triton, if he could turn her friends into mermaids so they could also go and enjoy pool parties. Next question is, what was the most popular / unpopular character? So I did start working for this party company in about 2014, and Frozen came out in 2013. So needless to say, Elsa and Anna were the most popular characters, with Elsa being the one that was most popular of the two. There were quite a few parties that I did where I was just Elsa with no Anna, because if a parent could only afford one princess for a party, generally they chose Elsa. Now, the most unpopular character, unfortunately, would probably be the classic princesses, with the exception of Cinderella. Cinderella would sometimes get parties even during the height of Frozen fever, because we are based in Florida, and Florida does have Cinderella's castle in Orlando. So she would still get some parties, but for almost all of 2014, 2015, it was always the Frozen sisters. So this question, what was your favorite costume as a princess? If you wore hoop skirts for the costumes, were there any hoop skirt malfunctions? So my favorite costume was the one that I had the hoop skirt malfunction in. Well, like I say hoop skirt malfunction, it was just an inconvenience more than anything. My favorite costume was Cinderella's because it fit so nicely, and that big huge skirt of the ball gown was so fun to flounce around in. I absolutely loved it. But at the time when I worked at the party company, I drove a 2002 manual Mini Cooper. So trying to fit into a Mini Cooper with several layers of skirts and a hoop skirt, it was tricky, let alone trying to use a gear shift while pressing down on the clutch that was an interesting ride. Now, here's another good question. Has there ever been a problem with your dress in a party? So this problem did not necessarily happen at a party. It happened at a meet and greet event. Now, keep in mind, nowadays, it is really easy to get a princess dress that's nice quality for cheap. But back then, a costume that looked decent from an online seller was going to run you usually around $300. And this dress had to not only fit a lot of girls at varying sizes, but be used for a lot of events by a lot of girls. So spending that much money on a dress for a small party company really just wasn't an option. So my boss would actually convert a lot of dresses into princess dresses or make some from scratch. And one such dress was Anna's coronation dress. My boss posted in our group asking who would like to debut the Anna coronation dress at an event at Barnes & Noble. And I was the first one to volunteer, so I got to do it. And I was so excited because I love Anna's coronation dress. I kind of like it even more than her adventuring dress. And so I was so ready to debut this dress. But when I got there, number one, the wig looked like a helmet. It was way too small for my head. And number two, that dress was rough. My boss did the best she could, but it didn't really look that great. And it also did not fit very well. So I was making do with it, I was tugging along. But while I was doing the meet and greet, we had a line that was snaking through the kids section of Barnes & Noble. And I look over and I see my parents and my godmother had come to do a meet and greet with me because they thought it'd be really fun to see me dressed up as a princess at my job. And I look over at them and both of my parents have a look on their face like, and my godmother's looking at me and she's going, pull up, pull up, pull up. And I look down and the dress has rode down quite a bit. Not enough for indecent exposure, but enough to make you go, okay. So I quickly yanked it up and then I was so embarrassed. My cheeks had to have been so red for the rest of the night and I kept having to adjust it and pull it up constantly. And it was just rough. Well, I like this question too. Has there ever been a time where a prince had come to a party? So in my party company, we did have princes. We actually had a really cute married couple who often played Flynn Rider and Rapunzel together. We also had, I believe, the nephew of one of the owners of the company who would play Kristoff. He would also play Olaf in a giant costume. And I believe that he even played Elf on a Shelf, which so much respect to that guy because I know that he was still in high school and I have no clue what his friends would say or did say when they saw him dressed up as a little red elf with blush on his cheeks and a funny little hat on his head. Like so much respect to that boy. I really hope that he got his money's worth for all of that. Can you choose which princess to be for a party or do you get a request from the parents? So the parents do always choose what princess goes to the party. They'll call my boss and say, hi, we want this princess or we want however many princesses. And then our boss will turn around and she will think of who best suits that princess. And then she'll text the girls and she'll say, hey, we have a party on this date, this time. And she would do that in a line. And then whichever girl said yes, was the one that would get the party. Now, most of us did have a preference for what princesses we like to play most. For example, I love playing Snow White because she's so campy and so fun, and I thought I looked cute as her. So if there was ever a Snow White party that someone wanted to have, my boss would usually reach out to me first, give me the details, and ask me if I was available for it. Now, there were definitely a few girls who all liked the same princess, and there was often a bit of drama about how many parties one girl got to do as a princess that another girl liked too, and vice versa. And there were definitely catfights over characters. So has your wig ever came/gotten snatched off? No. Before I started working at the party company, I got into cosplay because I loved anime when I was younger. I had been cosplaying since I was about 14 and I joined the party company when I was about 17. And so I had experience with costumes and wigs, and I learned to put in about 100 bobby pins. And if the bobby pins were not scraping your skull as you were putting them into the wig, you weren't putting it on right. So I always had extremely secure wigs, and I know my boss taught a lot of the girls similarly. And so usually we never had any issues with our wigs and their placement because we were all taught to really pin it down. But of course, if a kid really yanked on it very hard, it could kind of make it go askew. But generally then someone, either a parent or maybe one of the character attendants, would point it out to the princess, and then they would just subtly like eat and put it back in place. Now this question, what if your eye color doesn't match the princess you're going as? Do you use contacts? So again, nowadays it is really easy to find cheap colored contacts, but back in my day, they were not as easily available or as cheap. And keep in mind, contacts should only be used by one person. So it didn't make much sense for the party company to invest in colored contacts for the girls to wear. And honestly, with most princesses, it really didn't make that much of a difference. There were many times I played Snow White with my naturally blue eyes, and many of the other girls played characters whose eye color was not the same as their own. And the way that we would explain this to the kids if they asked was we would tell little white lies. They might say, oh, they didn't get my eye color right in my movie. Isn't that so weird? They might say, oh, the lighting is kind of weird. My eyes do look more blue than green today. Huh, isn't that weird? Do your eyes ever change color? So mainly what we did was tell a little lie and then try to change the topic of conversation. But the only character that we found that it truly mattered that they had the right eye color was Elsa. Because when you look at Elsa, her color palette, she has pale skin, very light blonde hair, and blue from head to toe, at least in her old dress. I had left the party company long before Frozen 2 came out. So actually one of the main reasons that I was hired was because of my naturally blue eyes. My boss had tried to do a couple parties with an Elsa who didn't have blue eyes, and both times she received complaints from the parents saying that the Elsas didn't look enough like Elsa. And when she probed for more information as to why, they narrowed it down to the eye color wasn't right, and it threw off the whole look. So when I came along with my naturally huge blue eyes, they were like, you hired. What costume was your least favorite? Elsa's. I know this may seem weird since I played her the most, but Elsa's costume was the bane of my existence. If the wig didn't look like a mullet, then the bodice was like a piece of armor, because especially in the early days, trying to get Elsa's costume right was so difficult. And the very first dress that I wore for her had been handmade by my boss. She had taken a corset and she had hand glued all these scale-like sequins to it, but it was so stiff that it moved like a piece of armor on me. And the skirt was also very itchy and uncomfortable and tight because it's almost that mermaid kind of design. And then by the time that we finally got around to getting an angel secret dress, the proportions on me were off. I have a longer torso, and the dress that we got had a torso that came down to like my bottom rib and not my natural waist. So I looked very strange and off. I just never was able to find a comfortable fit in that Elsa dress, which is a crying shame. And for the last question of this video, are you allowed to eat the birthday cake? Yes, my bosses actually encouraged us to eat the food that was provided and also drink some of the punch or lemonade or whatever was put out as well. Don't go overboard with it, but have some of it, because at the end of the day, kids often mimic the person that they are most infatuated with in that moment. And obviously, if you're doing a princess party, almost all of the kids are going to be locked onto you and want to do exactly what you're doing because they want to impress you. And of course, we want to make sure that the kids are enjoying themselves too. So we want to make sure that they're also eating and drinking and enjoying what has been provided to them at the party. And of course, we also want to set a good example for these kids. We don't want them to leave the party thinking, oh, well, Elsa doesn't eat or drink anything, so I'm not going to eat or drink anything. No! Eating food is okay. Eating sweets is okay. Enjoying yourself is okay. So we were absolutely encouraged to eat with the kids. Now, I would take this a step further when I played Elsa, and even though I love vanilla cake, I would always eat the chocolate cake or the chocolate cupcakes if they are provided, because I want to stay true to the character. And of course, Elsa and Anna always had that little bit going, chocolate. So I want to stay true to the character, and that was a sacrifice I was willing to make. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I answered any questions you might have about being a party princess. If I didn't answer your question, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to make another video. But I also want to know, has listening to these stories made you want to become a party princess? Did you ever have a princess come to your party when you were little? I know I did. I had an Ariel come to my party when I was really little, and looking back at those pictures, she looked a little rough. My parents also had to hire her out of like the yellow pages or the phone book or something like that. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing, liking, all those good things. I also have now created a Patreon if you would like to support me over there. I'm offering some behind the scenes content over there, so if you're interested, please go check it out. And I hope to see you in the next video.